JSON.stringify is a really useful tool, and JSON.parse to take JavaScript objects and do wonderful things with them. And it's great, except some objects JSON.stringify is going to choke. If your object has circular references in it, you're going to get a JavaScript error if you try to do that. If you have an object that has references to another object inside of it, multiple references, you won't get an error. But the resulting string, if you parse it, will not be a copy of the original object. It'll be something different. Is there any solution to this problem? Well, stick around. Let's find out. Yes, there is a way to handle these serialization problems, and this library that I'm going to talk about does just that. So what are the basic problems? There's two of them. First one is circular references. If you have an object, a JavaScript object, that has circular references inside of it, and you try to use JSON.parse, you're going to get a JavaScript error. It doesn't like it. And the second major problem is multiple references to the same object. This may come up less, but it's still a problem. In this case, you can actually use JSON.parse on it, and you will not hit any errors as long as there's no circular references in the object as well. But the problem is that what you will end up with in the JSON string will not actually match what the original object was. So if you parse it, it's not going to be the same thing. It's going to be copies instead of pointing back to the same object. But this library solves these problems. Let's look at the two core methods of the library that are used for serialization and that the other methods that I'm going to talk about that are now available use in order to do their work. The first one, serialized object. The serialized object method takes an input of the object or JavaScript array that you want to serialize. It could have the problems in it or not, but it can successfully take that object and make a serialized object. We'll cover that a little bit more. And then finally, the deserialized object method. This takes an input of a serialized object and creates a deserialized object. We'll talk more about that. Let's look first at the serialized object method. It makes a serialized object, and this is a special object that's in a certain format that this library understands and uses. Number one, it works where there is circular referencing. So if your input object has circular referencing in it, it will not blow up. But not only that, it will actually capture that circular reference information and include it inside the serialized object. It works with multi-references to the same object. So if your input object, again, has multiple references pointing to the same object, it's actually going to capture that information correctly and put it inside the serialized object. It contains an internal list of commands needed to recreate the original object. That includes circular references, that includes multi-references to the same object, and it includes additional information that the object just might have. If any part of it's frozen, any part of it is sealed, any part of it is not extensible, it captures that information as well. And the finalized serialized object that is created by this method, you can stringify it and not get any errors whatsoever. A few other things about the serialized object that is created with this method. It does not modify the original object, so the original object is left untouched. It will exclude properties in your original object that had DOM elements as values. It will exclude any methods that the object might have had. It allows you to optionally include the object's methods. So even though by default it excludes the methods, there is something you can do to turn a switch on so that it will actually serialize the methods. We'll go into that in a bit. Then there's the deserialized object method. It makes a deserialized object that is created from a serialized object as an input. It contains an output property that contains a new copy of the original object that was serialized. This includes something that was frozen, sealed, or made non-extensible. So if that original object had any part of it that had any of these things going on in it, the output of the object in this property will also contain exactly the same thing. This copy will not have additional stuff in it. Just like the input was not modified, the copy will be a copy of the input. There's no need to have extra information saved in it in order to make this work. If method copy is enabled, the new object will also have those methods with those methods, parameters, and code, which can be called on the new object, just like they were able to be called on the original object. That's the core functionality. That's what does all the magic with the serializing and deserializing. There are some additional methods. You could theoretically just use those two, but to make things easier, there's these methods as well, which again, use the serialized object and deserialized object methods in order to accomplish what they accomplish. The first method is setCopyMethodsFlagTo. This takes a Boolean. By default, it's set to false. But if you want to, in your serialization process, make sure that any methods, JavaScript methods, that were added to the object that you're serializing get serialized as well, you'd set this to true before you do it. Next method is stringify. This works just like the JSON.stringify method, except you can pass in a JavaScript object that JSON.stringify would normally choke on. So this takes the input of your object, converts it into a serialized object, then it stringifies it, and of course you can use it with the parse method, which works much like the JSON.parse. The thing that's different here is that this parse method is looking for a JSON string that was created from a serialized object. Then there's the deserializeJsonString. This makes a deserialized object of the JSON string that's passed in, which was originally made from a serialized object, if you can follow all that. I plan on covering this in another video, as well as all these other things. And then there's cloneObj. You pass in an object, and then it's going to return a new object that looks the same, but is a copy, a complete copy, and it's deep cloned. And again, what's nice about this is it works with any kind of JavaScript object, even with circular references in it, even with multiple references to the same object. So that's like a basic synopsis of the methods in this JavaScript library so far. I would encourage you to download it from GitHub. The links will be in the show notes down below, and to give it a try. I'm planning on putting some demo code up on GitHub in the near future. There's also documentation in the wiki on GitHub about the API and how to use it. Now don't forget to like this video if you found it interesting or useful, to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and to ring the bell on my channel's page so that you can be notified when I post new videos, including, say, more information on this library. Thanks for watching.